Welcome to Adobe Photoshop. As you can see, this is the latest version available on the Adobe Creative Cloud. Updates to the software are free each year for those who have a subscription to the Adobe Creative Cloud. For those students who do not have an Adobe subscription, I get asked this question a lot. Can I use older versions of the software for this class? And my short answer is absolutely. There is no reason that having software that's a little older should stop you from creating wonderful design work and projects. The next few lessons of this course are for those who are brand new to Photoshop, or maybe you've only opened it a few times and played around with it, or those who want to start at the very basic level. For those already a little comfortable with the basic interface and tools of Photoshop, feel free to move through these lessons quickly or skip them. There are going to be some really awesome up-to-date tools that may not be available to you if you have older versions, and I'll try to mention those throughout this course, what those tools might be. All versions of Photoshop have the same basic elements, so let's go ahead and get started by opening up a new document and learning those basic tools. I'm going to click on Create New in the dashboard, and this is going to be a little bit of a newer dashboard. Before, you would just have a blank window if you have an older version of Photoshop. Things at this point are going to look a little different for you, but it's all going to be the same. We're just going to create a new document, or you're just going to go to File, New, and let's just create a basic document. If you have an older version of Photoshop, you'll be able to just have kind of these simple options. The newer versions have some kind of pre-made template sizes where you can go do photo sizes, print sizes, even web sizes. So it's kind of nice to have these built-in templates or built-in sizes that you can do. So let's do something really simple. Let's do a very simple Instagram post. So let's go ahead and type in 1000 by 1000 pixels. So we have 1000 in width and 1000 in height. And orientation is not going to matter since it's going to be a square. And we're going to do this in pixel since it's a digital item. We're going to do this in RGB color mode, but we can always switch that to CMYK if we wanted to make a print document. But this is going to be a web Instagram project, and we're going to do just a white background. And everything kind of leave the same. Let's go ahead and create it. We're creating a very simple Instagram post to kind of experiment with. So every version of Photoshop is going to have some basic elements. And that's going to be your toolbar. That's going to be right here on the left. That's this little guy which you can kind of move around. There's these little double arrows right here you can click and collapse it to 2 columns if you like a more compact view. So this is really, Photoshop is incredibly customizable, which we're going to find out in a moment. So this is your toolbar. We're going to be able to cut objects out. You're going to be able to crop. You have the paint bucket tool. A lot of your basic tools that you're used to using and thinking about when you think about Photoshop are accessed right here on your toolbar. To the right, you're going to have what's called panels. And these panels are also fully customizable. If there's a specific panel you don't think you're going to use, you could just drag this tab out and be able to close it down. And you can rearrange where they are, so you can actually bring these into this other little column and have quick little pullouts. And so these are totally customizable. So one thing I want to do with you guys to make sure we kind of have some similar tools available so our screens don't look exactly the same, but they look pretty close. We're going to go up to Window on the top, and we're going to arrange our workspace. So we're going to go down to the Workspace option, and we're going to make sure it's on Essentials. So this is going to be your default mode for Photoshop. That's what we're going to start with. And I'm going to try to go over all the panels and tools you're going to need as a graphic designer, because Photoshop is meant for graphic design, but also photo editing and a ton of other things. So we're going to focus mostly on graphic design panels that are useful for the projects we're going to be doing. So also, let's make sure we reset Essentials. So if you already are on Essentials, make sure you reset it, and it's going to all bring it back to default. And it'll vary depending on what version of Photoshop you are in. So there's certain things you're not going to use very much. So this Learn thing is a kind of a new panel in the newer version of Photoshop. We're not going to need that. You just want to try to streamline and simplify your panels on the right so you don't have all these windows you're never going to use. You really want to focus on the ones you're going to use the most as a graphic designer. And I'm going to go over a couple of those here quickly. So your Layers panel is going to be pretty essential. Here's our Layers panel. I'm going to go ahead and drag it out so you can see. You're going to use layers more than any other panel in our project. So definitely Layers is a very important one. We'll find out about channels a little bit later, but I like to go ahead and keep that. Paths as well. So if you have these, just go ahead and keep those the way they are. And there's certain ones like libraries we're not going to use quite right away, so we're just going to kind of simplify. So we have the adjustments panel. We of course have our color panel. This is how we're going to be selecting our color. And we have swatches, which we're going to be able to select our swatches. So those are all very important. Gradients are very important for a designer. We're going to use lots of gradients as well in the course. And patterns, we can go ahead and drag that out and simplify. So we're missing a lot of really good essential panels. How do we call out a panel that we're not seeing on the right? Or let's say we accidentally deleted one. Oops, didn't mean to do that. How do I get all this back up? To recall any panel that's available, you can go up right here to Window, and these are all panels right here in your Windows tab. So you can call up any panel that you want. So if you're working in typography, the character panel is pretty important because it helps us with typography and size. So as a graphic designer, these character and paragraph panels are very important. So I'm going to go ahead and drag those in very prominent positions, and you don't have to put them in the same places that I do. Of course, you can go ahead and expand out your panel area and make it a more wide or more narrow. All of this is fully customizable. So let's find some other very important panels to have around for a graphic designer. Character styles, we're going to use that a little bit later in the course. So let's go ahead and make sure character styles panel is open. We could drag that maybe next to the character option. Also, none of this has to be perfect. Don't feel like you have to match whatever I have perfectly, but just make sure you have your layers panel, make sure you have your color panel, and paragraph and character panels. And also most recently, with new updates to Adobe Photoshop, the properties panel has been kind of where they've been putting a lot of options for people. So here's our properties panel, and it's going to have a lot of things with guides, grids, all sorts of things. So we're going to keep that properties panel nearby. So that's how you kind of work with panels and kind of how you rearrange them, and you're going to find out which ones are going to be most beneficial to you as a graphic designer as you do more and more projects. So you have your toolbar to the left. We're going to slowly create kind of this Instagram project, and we're going to use about half these tools just to kind of introduce them so you can get used to your toolbar, you get used to all your options on the right. And there's even more additional photo editing options. You probably wonder how people do all those really cool photo editing techniques, and most of those are going to be found in your image dropdown. And we're going to get to that in future projects. But for right now, let's focus on the toolbar and the panels and get used to the basics of creating simple shapes, typography, and do a simple Instagram post. So let's create some basic shapes. So I'm over here in our marquee selection tool. Right here, it's going to look just like this little dotted square. We're going to click and hold, and we're going to be able to get options. And you can always know if there's sub options or a drop-down menu. If you click and hold, if you see that little arrow down at the bottom of the icon, we know if we click and hold, we'll be able to have access to more additional options. So let's go ahead and just create a simple circle. And I'm just going to click and drag. And for those who have older versions of Photoshop, you'll have to hold down the Shift button and drag if you want to create a perfect circle. If you don't want to create a perfect circle and you want to create an oval, don't hold down the Shift button, and you can have more control over your selection. It doesn't scale, what they call scaling dimensionally. But we want to create a perfect circle. We want it to scale dimensionally. So I'm just going to hold down that Shift button and drag. So anytime you see kind of this dotted line, that means it's a selection. It's not an object yet. So let's fill this selection with a color. So we're going to get that trusty paint bucket tool, which you might have used before. And then we can go down to our little color options here. I'm going to go down and select on this top swatch just a really bright color, maybe just select green, and I just double clicked on it, and you can kind of change the color however you like. So we're going to select green. We have our paint bucket tool selected, and we have kind of this what's going on sign. So kind of a no, you're not going to be able to do it. Could not use the paint bucket because no layers are selected. Let's talk about layers. So let's go ahead and drag out our very important layers panel, and let's go ahead and create a layer. So we're going to go down here to this addition icon. It looks a little different in different versions of Photoshop, but it's create a new layer. And here's our layer. And let's go ahead and fill in on this layer the green. So you can kind of see a preview of what's happening there with that layer. If I were to draw another circle, so I'm right back here to my ellipse tool selection, and I want to draw another circle, I'm on the same layer. Let's toggle this right here. Toggle this to orange. Gonna get our paint bucket tool, fill that in. What you'll notice is this is all one kind of unit. But I'd love to have these on separate layers so I can move them behind each other and in front of each other. So let's go back in time, which how do you do that? You can use a keyboard shortcut, Command Z, and you can press Command Z, and you can go back steps in time, or you can call out your history panel. So if you don't see your history panel, just go up to Window and let's call it up. There's our history panel. Let's drag him right down here because he's pretty important. You can go back in time in your history panel to the state that you want to go to. So let's go back to where we just had a circle. Let's add a new layer. So let's go ahead and add a new layer, and let's go ahead and do that same circle and do the paint bucket tool. So now we have total control over these layers. So this one's on top, orange is on top. Let's go ahead and drag orange below, and now orange is on the bottom. So pretty simple. And when we do more complicated projects, you can have 20 different layers. So it's really good to kind of name particular layers so you can keep track of all the different layers that might be happening in your particular design piece.